There you go.
Hello, well my name is Dave Burland and I've been very fortunate, we're very fortunate today with the wonderful weather we have, and an old, very old friend's dropped in to see me, which is always nice to see somebody when you live a bit out of the town anyway, like I do. So it's Tony Wilson.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic to be here.
And what, just tell us, I mean, I've followed your career for a sort of sketchily, whatever I can, but what are you up to at the moment?
Well, at the moment it's almost like I've had to reinvent myself. For the last 20 years I've been telling stories in schools, travelling all over the world. I've been to something like 2,000 schools in 20 years. And then unfortunately budget cuts have really stopped schools from having the money to book me. And now I'm returning to the folk scene.
Right. And do you anticipate any problems with that? Because people still the cachet of your name still carries on, doesn't it?
Well, I think really, I mean, with it being 25 years plus since I ever toured all the time, I think people have not exactly forgotten me, but they're quite surprised when I turn up.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that case of like, didn't you used to be Tony Wilson? It's like, I definitely still am Tony Wilson.
And so, tell us about, just give us an instance of the schools that you did before we get on to the folky sort of stuff.
Well, I'd been a teacher. I had to stay at home, and I didn't have to, but I chose to look after the children, and I stayed at home, then became like a playgroup leader, then I was a PTA manager, and then I sort of trained, so I taught for 12 years. And so I had like quite a broad spectrum of understanding of what children needed as far as stories were concerned. So I made up the job, like we all do. Yeah. I lied and told people I knew exactly what I was doing. And then, and I made a lot of mistakes in the first year or so, but I wasn't charging people an awful lot of money, but I learned how to do it. Yeah. And then that kind of continued on right from early years, like from preschoolers up to year 10s, like pre-GCSE children. And you would go to a school and people would say, we want you to tell stories about Romans. So I would read up about Romans and then I'd make up a story which was generated by the children. And then you go to another school and they'd say, we would like you to make up stories about steel making in the Rhondda Valley. So I went to the Rhondda Valley, did some research, got loads of books, read about that, and then used the children's ideas with them on the spot to make up stories.
And how did they do this? The kids, I mean, what was their involvement? Obviously, was it like role playing, like a?
No, they'd be kind of sitting in front of me, and it would be anything from like 6 to like 350 at a time, and would say who's going to be in the story. And they would get a chance to choose. So I'd write on man, boy, woman or a girl, and I'd say where they're going to be, what are they going to do, why are they there and when. And they would give me all of the descriptive adjectives that were necessary. He was tall, he was strong, it was wide, it was flat, it was broad. So they'd see me making notes in front of them, and I would instantaneously just look at this set of notes and make it into sentences. So they had an opening paragraph.
But basically it was their imagination as well.
Yes, that's it.
Which is very healthy, must be.
It was healthy, yeah. It's great. I mean, if children have ownership of the stories, then they're going to be interested. So rather than me just saying, well, I can write a story, you say, man, okay, I'm going to think about what it is, they were directing exactly what it was all the way through. So right from whether it had a happy ending or a sad ending, and they could see a story being made up in front of their very eyes within the space of, well, from the first question to me telling the story to like 15 minutes or thereabouts. And the school would get a video copy of it or an audio copy of this, because having been a teacher, I was aware of what teachers needed, because they need that follow-on work. So, but it was a I am not complaining in the slightest. I mean, it's unfortunate that I don't have the opportunities anymore, but it was the best 20 years of performance experience I'd ever had.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How did you go on when you went abroad then? When you did, I mean, presumably you did the same thing
Well-
in China and wherever.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Well, what happened was, you know how we all get these like spam emails. Well, actually, I don't get quite as many. Where they're kind of asking, so like, do you want a smaller penis and like a bigger mortgage kind of thing. Well, this thing came through and said, would you like to sort of like tour in Argentina? And I thought, oh yeah, this is really clever. This is like algorithms gone crazy. They've really worked out. They've looked at who I am and worked out that that would be something I would think of. So there was a random email that turned up, and I was just about to go on holiday, and I thought, no, it can't be. But I looked it up and followed it up because it came in on the spam.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and it was a legitimate company. But I thought, well, I'm gonna phone the person, who was in charge, Alberto, and he was in Argentina. And I phoned him up, and he said, yeah, that'd be great, but I need you to sign a contract. And I said, whoa, like I'm going on holiday. I don't do any of this kind of stuff. It's like, don't make a decision when you're drunk, because it's never a good one. Don't make a decision when you're jet lagged. So basically, I finally got in touch with them and we chatted, and I saw that it was legitimate. But I that sounds terrible. I asked quite forcibly that they paid for my airfare out, rather than me put that up front, which is what they were asking.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is too dangerous to put the money up. And that turned out to be the first tour that I had in Chile and Argentina, and it lasted about 5 weeks or thereabouts. So, and then I went to Brazil later in that year, because that was in the March of 2010. And then I went to Brazil, and then I've been to Colombia and Peru and Mexico, Costa Rica, Uruguay. I'm sure I've missed a few out, but we also went to China and to Korea. Now, Chinese and Korean, I don't really think I could manage those, but I've become quite fluent in Spanish.
Really?
So,
It sounds as if you've really had to do your homework, in actual fact.
Well, I've always
pursue
loved.
this.
Yeah, I've always loved languages.
Yeah.
My father, who was in the Second World War, came back and he could say a few words of Arabic, which I found astonishing and very interesting. So when I toured with bands on the continent, I always learned some French and some Belgian and some Dutch and German, and I lived in Germany for quite a while, so I always spoke some of the language.
But it's not wasted, any of that knowledge you've got about the, with the kids and everything, because if things did look up, you could do a bit of that as well, couldn't you?
Oh yes.
But your next project is to get back into the folk scene.
Well, yes. I mean, it's not out of desperation, but luckily, when I was storytelling, I was working with Tom McConville. We bumped into each other, and I said, why don't we do some stories together at Christmas? So we've done that for seven or 8 years at Christmas time, and then we were playing, just clarting about. I feel so Geordie. I was just clarting about, and we sort of went, this is really good, why don't we try for some folk clubs? And we did a concert in Halifax, and it went really well, and then we did a few concerts. So we're working as a part-time duo. I mean, Tom's very busy as a solo act and with the Tom McConville band and with other like guitarists. But what we are doing is more like singing together. I'm playing several different instruments.
Is it like a show? I mean, a show in that it's more or less scripted, even if it's in your head, or is it?
No. When we're doing the stories, I would tell the stories and Tom would be playing the violin behind me, which is very mesmeric. It's really engaging for the children because the music flows, and he's very good at it. He's very good at. No, he really is. He's really good at it, and it weaves like almost like a hypnotic spell over the children.
Yeah.
They're listening to the words but listening to the music at the same time, and they find it fascinating that there's
I
two
can imagine.
men
Yeah.
standing there. But when we're doing the duo in the folk clubs, this is stuff that we used to do as a duo in about 75, 76.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of a cyclic nature to this,
Absolutely,
you know.
yeah. And do you find that the folk clubs and the venues have changed much? I mean, there's obviously less of them, haven't there, really?
There's certainly a lot less of them. I think the warmth of response, especially with somebody like Tom, who's like a very charismatic performer. At first, I was quite happy to be the accompanist and maybe do like one or two songs. But what we've developed now is much more of a proper double act, which is hugely enjoyable. But it whetted my appetite. I went to go and see Tom. This is turning into all stories, isn't it? But he'd forgotten to bring a mic stand when he was playing in Newcastle, and he phoned me up and said, could I bring him one? So I wasn't intending to go to the folk club, but I got on the metro, brought him a mic stand, and the organiser was asking people, so like, do you sing? Do you sing? And he said to me, do you sing? And I went, no. It was the first thing that came out, like, no, because...
Oh, how surprising.
Well, yes, I'd sung on my own, but it'd all been in the past, like 25 years beforehand. And I think, apart from a few forays as compere, and maybe 3 or 4 songs at festivals, I'd never sung on my own in front of adults. I mean, I sang with the children.
Yeah.
I've written about 30 songs for children about writing. You know, the apostrophe catastrophe blues and oh dear, what can the metaphor be, and things like this. But it's all from a teaching perspective, that you're trying to teach children like how to use language and grammar and description, but hopefully in a remarkable and memorable way, through a song.
I agree with you entirely, because I've done it when I was playing. I did a few schools actually, and the thing I did find about it was such a change for kids to see something like that, to have it's a different slant on life, isn't it, when you go in and you get a guitar or whatever and you play a song for them. And I used to get them to write a bit like you, 12-bar blues, you know. And I wrote one called the Calcium Blues, which is about drinking your milk and all, because there was this big campaign on at the time. But they wrote it as well. And I said, I used to go in and I used to say to the kids, what's your very worst thing, your most unfavourite thing? Yeah. And whatever they said, we'd write a song about it.
Yes, that's it.
It's great, because it's great motivational, because it draws on their imagination as well, you know.
Yeah, well, that's perfect sort of kind of procedures to work with children. It's a good methodology. Yeah. It's not what I can do. I can write stories, I can write songs, but I'm not here to show what I can do in the same way as you're trying to draw from them what it is we can do together. Yeah. And that's perfect practice. That's great.
It's good. But what sort of stuff are you thinking of? What sort of format are you trying to get back into as you get back into the folk club? Are you going to be a solo singer? Because you did quite a lot of that, didn't you?
I did. I mean, I'd been in lots of different bands and in duos, but I could always fall back on the solo work. I suppose to a certain extent, the majority of what I did was almost abroad, you know, like France and Belgium and Holland and Germany, Switzerland, Italy, you know, places like that. But in between times I would come back and do work on a solo basis. I think that, as you said earlier, that the folk scene's contracting. You have to do whatever you can, really.
Yeah.
I know I'm not getting 3 to 4 days a week working in schools, but as soon as I decided to become a singer again, all of a sudden, like literacy conferences and workshops and this kind of thing have all tried to book me. And I've just done like a week in Telford, and the week before that I was in Birmingham teaching teachers and things like that. And I'm thinking, like, I'm supposed to be singing now, not doing this
Well, I
storytelling
think
malarkey.
that's the joy of it, though,
But
isn't it?
the whole point is, I'm lucky that I can do.
You do all that, yeah.
I can do all this.
Yeah. And how do you envisage? Well, I mean, you're back in it anyway.
Yeah.
So, and it's not as if you're unknown. I mean, all that early stuff you've just been talking about. You were doing the continent before I did it. You know, I mean, you were with Dave Bullman, weren't you, and all that, and John Doonan and all that.
Yes, that's right. Well, the first trip abroad was with John Doonan, and that was just hilarious, absolutely hilarious, because you know it was my first time away, and I find myself in Belgium in the red light district watching sort of like belly dancing strippers, which is it's a very niche market. But you know, but playing the banjo in between the strippers, so it's it's kind of.
And is that still your sort of first instrument, the banjo? Because
I thought you were going to say, is that your first wish?
playing with the strippers.
Playing for strippers, yeah.
Yes, playing for strippers.
The trouble is, if you play for strippers, you only see them from behind.
Very true. Yeah.
No, to be honest, I think it's like everything. You know, when you're a teenager, it's very difficult to find out what it is that you want to do, and you know, everybody's like saying, you know, do you want to collect stamps? You know, or do you want to? I mean, I was a very outdoorsy kind of boy. You know, the Scouts and you know, like climbing and like camping and canoeing and all these kind of things. And I suppose my first would be unaccompanied, because you couldn't really climb up a mountain and stay in a shepherd's hut and, you know, suddenly, you know, here I am in the middle of a shepherd's hut, I've got my banjo, so singing was the first thing.
Heavy banjo you had, actually.
Which I've still got. And it's still as loud, but I think I play it a lot slower. These are the things. I've got to say that what happened was I got a 5-string banjo, because I'd seen the Dubliners, and 5-string banjos were on the television with the Beverly Hillbillies, and Scruggs, you know, Flattened Scruggs, all of these things were on the television all the time. Things like Hootenanny and 6-5 Special, and I was a bit too young for the skiffle era. But things like Tonight, when you had Cy Grant and Julie Felix and Lance Percival on the television, so folk had a big profile.
It did have a big profile, and nobody seems to think that. You know, they think it was small potatoes, and it wasn't. It was.
No.
It was. I mean, it was reasonably accessible with the telly, getting on the telly. You know?
Yes. Oh yes.
And I did a program once with Roy Bailey, and they were talking about Mixolydian modes on the telly. Now, can you imagine that these days?
Yeah. Well, maybe opening on the Open University. Were you wearing sandals at the time?
No, I wasn't wearing sandals. No. And I always wear socks with them, if I do anyway. So.
Oh well, okay, right, okay. I know exactly who you are now.
So,
but I mean, this thing about folk music. I mean, it was incredibly popular.
Hugely.
You know.
Hugely.
What was it? Walk Right In with Wally Whiten. And there were the regional folk programs on the television.
There were.
You know.
There were.
So
Yeah.
Melanie Harold
I did one up in Newcastle where I sang The Streets of London, I remember.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I shall have to try and dig that out.
Foggy Duo. It was Tyne Tees, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we were all on that. I've tried to find it, because at that time, which must have been 76, 77-ish, or thereabouts, I had a Zapata moustache. I have one photograph which nobody will ever see. It was bright ginger, by the way. And a denim waistcoat with leather patches.
You'd look just like a Colombian footballer then, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So, but I mean, I was swept up with the way that it was. I mean, and on the radio as well.
It was the alternative music of its time, wasn't it? That original sort of time slot, say from the 60s up to the 70s, was. I mean, you could go in Barnsley now and say, in a young, where the young people say, anybody been to a folk club? Oh no. But you go into where there's older people, and they all came to the folk club.
Yes, yeah. It was as much a social thing as a musical thing, but it was a progression. There was that making music on your own. You know, people would always like listen to the crooners and Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra. And there would be maybe like the odd one or two people who would play a guitar, but there was like an explosion, you know, early 50s, if you think they're 52-ish, there was like an explosion of people who merchant seamen would bring reasonable guitars.
Yeah, they did.
You know, and they would bring records from America, like the VJ records, and you know, and like original, you know, Presley, and then Lonnie Donegan seemed to be like the acceptable face of acoustic music. So
yes, he was. Yeah.
So he really boosted it. And then there was, you know, a big revival.
It was. It was indeed. Yeah, there was. I mean, there were a lot of. I mean, you could work at Newcastle. There were about 6 clubs in Newcastle, I think, at one time, every night of the week.
Yeah.
So what are you sort of? What's going to be a? I mean, are you going to be a singer-songwriter? Are you going to be a?
Well, it's kind of strange. I mean, all those years ago, like before I became a teacher, I got involved in quite an awkward contract where I couldn't actually play. So that was another reason why I stayed at home and brought the children up, because I really couldn't work, because I would have to sign everything over, and like all performances would have to be sort of like halved and all this kind of stuff. So I basically stopped playing. But when that contract came to an end, I mean, subsequently, I've shown the contract to a lawyer friend of mine, and he said it's not worth the paper it was written on. So I had like 6 years of silence, and after that 6 years of silence, there was this like kind of dam that just kind of opened, and I wrote like about 30 or 40 songs and recorded them on cassette. Yeah, you'll have to look it up. And I know somebody said wax cylinders, but so I recorded all these songs on cassette and never sang them because I didn't have like an outlet, and I'd always sung traditional songs, and that was kind of my thing, which it still is. You know this thing in England, you either have to be one thing or another. You can't be. Yeah,
you know, it's very, very strange. Yeah, so, I mean, we'll not go into the contractual thing, but because that could take another day, couldn't it? But that's a really sad thing, isn't it?
I had the best time in my life looking after the children.
Oh, well,
and it was the most formative thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. So it was absolutely incredible.
How old were the kids then?
They're from birth, yeah. So,
and how old are they now?
38, 36 and 34. You know, so
really?
Yeah, I know. I know you can't believe it.
I cannot believe that. That's amazing.
Well, I'm a grandfather as well. You know, I've got like 3 grandchildren. Yeah. You know, and but absolutely the most formative thing that ever happened to me. It got me to be much less self-absorbed, and
I think that's a good. That's
the thing. I mean, I changed. I think I was.
But do you think that sort of works against you in some ways? I would hesitate to suggest that you're one of the people who wants to be a star, in inverted commas, you know, because I don't think that's the way you are. But if you become sort of not a me person, and also the music is not, do you think that takes away a bit of the drive towards the?
Well, I've never wanted to be a star.
Have you never?
No, not at all. Oh. Not at all. I mean, I love performing. It's the music that's the important thing.
It is.
That's what I think. It's not.
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
But that's the same with you. I mean, you think the song is the most important thing. I mean, it comes across in the way that you play. You know, you're not going like, I'm going to do this song because it's a. You do that song because you like that song, and you're like a cross genre like player. You know, you're as happy with rock as you would be with traditional music.
I once saw an old film, an old cowboy film with what was his name, Dirk Bogarde in it, and he was playing Anacleto as a bandit.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get over the fact that I think it was Spencer Tracy was a priest, and he couldn't break him down. He couldn't understand him, and he couldn't break him down. At the end of this, when he's dead, Spencer Tracy, if my memory serves me correctly, Dirk Bogarde looks at him and says, "It was the singer, not the song." Well, I think it's exactly the opposite. I think it's the song, not the singer.
Yeah.
and that's the way it's always been for me, and that's why I got into it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I thought that would. You were the same as a lot of people felt
Yeah.
like that, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing better than like looking through old books and old manuscripts, and there is a society. Trust me, okay. It's called the Literary and Philosophical Society Library in Newcastle, and it has the most extraordinary collection of traditional songs. And this isn't like an axe to grind, but it's when you hear new performers just regurgitating albums from other people who've gone and done the groundwork. And I like the idea that you're not doing things to be different for difference's own sake. It's because somebody had, out of the goodness of their own mind, composed a song for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They'd sung it because it did something for them. It was recorded in manuscript form by, the English Folk Dance and Song Society, or what was it, the Journals of the Folk Song Society, as it used to be from 1899 up until 1914. Wonder why that date came in. But and it meant something to somebody then, so there's no reason why it can't mean something to somebody now. So instead of like the same 12 songs being like regurgitated, I love looking back to the past. And
what do you think that the public's opinion of folk music is?
Much as I love like Rumbling Sid Rumpo, it's easy to vilify it with a stereotype that people haven't experienced. So they're relying on second-hand information to find out what folk music is. There was a session. Now there's quite a lot of sessions in Newcastle which happen round about sort of 12 o'clock till 3 o'clock. So of course it's people who aren't in work, and it's people of a certain age who can go to them. But there were 20 different performers, and there were no two songs the same. You had everything from self-composed songs from the likes of Ed Pickford. You had traditional songs. You had it's like songs with guitar, songs that were parodies, songs that were musical. It's such a broad spectrum, and I think that people have got this idea that it's head down, finger in the ear, singing through your nose. I mean, if you watch a lot of folk music now, it borders on rock.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think. But I mean, that's the younger generation, and actually some of the older generation who feel that they can get away with it, which is a good thing.
It's not a bad thing
because it keeps it fresh.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with singing an old song, but I like to feel as if I'm doing old songs that mean something to me.
Yeah.
But when you say about singer-songwriter, so I'd written all of these songs and never sung them, and then I started. Well, the basic thing was, I thought overnight, that's it. I'll just go back to being a folk singer again, and it's not that easy. I had to relearn how to play the guitar properly, relearn how to play the banjo and the mandola and the string, so that it was of a quality that I was happy with, because I found that I wasn't playing as good as I had done 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I've put in a lot of groundwork and practiced, and
you have to rehearse a lot now these days, because it's physiological, isn't it? Your hands get slower and everything, and your brain gets slower.
I just couldn't. I'd got to the point where, like when you're telling the story, it's not like a runaway train. It doesn't start like this. If you've forgotten something, because you don't want to be like a human tape recorder.
No, of course not.
So I mean, I've got like 200 plus stories I could tell, like off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So you wind up within a week. I wouldn't tell the same 4 stories every day, so I would tell at least 20 different stories in a week.
Yeah.
And then the next week I might do 5 of those from the following week with a different 15. you know. But so at first I found it very difficult to make sure that I played the guitar and kept the words, you know, in the right order, because I'd just got not lazy, but you know, just like the story's the thing.
It's the focus, maintaining your focus on it, I think, as well. I mean, I was away from it. I mean, I did gigs within travelling distance, sort of 50, but by and large for 10 years. And it was coming to the quieting part of my career anyway. I found that I didn't work for about, I wasn't working properly like I used to do for about 10 years. And when you come back to it, you start doing it, I was terrified.
Oh,
I was absolutely terrified.
Can I just say that's so heartening to hear? You know, I mean, you're one of the premier sort of performers and singers, and I mean your voice. People travel over broken glass to hear. So.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so.
No, but true. I mean, the first time I saw you was, I think I've told you the story before, but I'm not sure. I saw you in about October of 1972 at Leeds University Folk Club, and at that time, like a sniff of the barmaid's apron would get us drunk. So I'd had like a pint and a half of bitter, you know, because that's what you're supposed to drink. I hated the taste of it, you know. But I was just under the impression, you know, so like, I'm going to drink bitter. So I'd had like about a pint and a half, and just like, I was like so in love with what you were doing. And then I had like another pint and a half, and I was just so drunk that I went back to my hall of residence and cut all the strings of my 5-string, my guitar. I stood on my tin whistle and all the rest of it. I woke up the next morning, like, walked, and it's just, you know, like when you see like a string snap on a cartoon, and it's like, zzz, like this, I look, man, oh my God, what have I done? Because I thought, like, I could never have been anywhere near.
Oh,
but yeah, no, this is an 18-year-old boy.
It's very nice of you to say so.
Yeah.
But,
oh no, but always want to amaze.
I did find that, you know, I mean, a couple of years ago, I just got back into the swing of it, and it's why I prefer doing clubs actually, and smaller venues, because you don't have to sort of terrify yourself before you get on.
Right.
But I did Towersey when there were sort of 5,000 people sat around in a tent, you know, and I'm on after the Spooky Men's Chorale, which is, they're brilliant, you know. All this, there's about 30 of them, you know. And Richard Thompson put it into perspective. He said, it's like going up on stage with a guitar in your hand and no clothes on. Because you feel so naked.
Well, I'm pleased. Do you know, I mean, that's a kind of honesty that I like to hear, because when I went back to try and sing, I thought, well, what can I do? You go to a folk club and you get one song. That's really, that's quite standard. If you go to a folk club to do, you know, on an ordinary night, you get like one song to sing. And I was thinking, like, I need a few more to get like up to speed. So I started going to open mic nights and buskers nights. And my wife Anne said, well, what you could do is you could leave the guitar in the boot, and if you don't feel comfortable, you know, like go in, have a look around, and then you could just like come out and nobody will know that you are wanting to play.
She's wise.
Yeah, she's very wise.
A wise woman.
Yeah, and so I went to one which was in Jarrah, and I sort of like thought, oh well, there's nobody here. That's a good start. Like, you know, play to nobody. And Guy Bainbridge, who's just an absolutely fabulous performer, and again in like rock and jazz and sort of reggae and all kinds of things. Great singer, great player. You could see me like kind of look, and he says, do you play? And quicker than a blink, I went, yeah. And he says, well, do you want to borrow me guitar? Well, I play in Dadgad, so I have to bring my own guitar or detune somebody else's. So he said, great. So like, I'll put you on after me, because there were no other players that turned up. He says, do about 5. I was like, I don't know if I can remember all of 5, but I did it and I felt great. And then on that same night, I went to another one, and they said, oh, do about 5. So, but I was petrified. Absolutely.
It's not who's there, or how many are there. There's something to do with the fact of getting up again.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've got out of the habit of it.
I also think it's a case of it shows you care. It's
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's not like I can get away with this. I'll do something that I know. So to be honest, that was in March of 2017. This was about a week after I'd seen Tom, and I'd said no, and I thought that's ridiculous. Of course I can. Of course I can do this.
Yeah.
I've got like, I had like 3 CDs worth of like money, like fantastic songs that I could sing.
Yeah.
And so I sat down and listened to them. Luckily, before I packed the guitar away in the early days or the late days of video, I could borrow the school's video, and I videoed myself playing. So I was looking and going, what was I doing there? I could see what key it was in and all the rest of it. So I sat down and relearned like 20 or 30 folk songs.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm doing, buskers nights and open mic nights. So I learned Holly's songs and Bowie's songs and stuff like this. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I want to do my songs. So I went back and got the cassettes. And now I've got a last count about 25. I've just recorded them all end to end. And there's an hour's worth of material, which I'm thrilled
great.
with.
Yeah.
So it's it's that thing like with you and with like Archie Fisher. I am not just a traditional singer. I could do a traditional night. I could do a night of just mine. I could do a night of other people's songs.
Yes.
But I'm very fortunate to have that kind of breadth.
I think it's in a state of mind, isn't it? It's because you like. It's not because you dislike other forms of music. You like folk music as a broader spectrum of music, as acoustic music, and and that's fairly important. And what's limited? It's only limited by the fact that if you can do it and it sounds okay on an acoustic guitar,
yes,
that's it. That's the argument.
Yeah.
And quite often it refines the song to a greater sort of. It makes the song have more point, more attack.
Have you ever seen Elvis Costello play acoustic guitar?
No, I haven't actually. No.
That's something to behold. My epiphany with the guitar was watching Squeeze.
Yeah.
The two of them, Difford and Tilbrook.
Difford and Tilbrook, yeah.
Just the two of them at Monterey. Just 2 guitars. I thought I had never seen the guitar played in that way, and I just thought that's what I'm going to aspire to.
Yeah. And what was the way that they were playing? Can you describe it?
It's like instead of playing like a straight block chord, like playing like a G, you would be playing a G, then you would go down, and you would I know what it is in Dadgad, but what you'd be doing is you'd be playing like an F sharp and a B against each other. So you'd have like the G chord, and then you'd be doing like a run down. And there's nothing to say that you can't do that within folk music. I mean, I've got to say, I am not sniffy about the way that people play the guitar. You don't have to play it, so that it just sounds like a blur of notes. I go to one in South Shields, the Britannia, and there's a lady there. It's fabulous. She plays like arpeggios in the way that Joan Baez used to play arpeggios. Yeah. It's really effective, and the way that it's played doesn't matter, but you can refine, your own style, and that had a big effect on me. I think like when I play, I tend to think of the guitar more as a percussive instrument than more a melodic.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a sort of, this is probably not. It's about me, this, but it's...
I want to hear, because...
Well, I bought an amp, actually, and I've gone back to using my really old Epiphone Texan.
All right.
I've got other guitars, but it's because I'm getting a bit of arthritis in these fingers, and it's a narrower fingerboard.
Yeah.
So, but I've got a pickup on it, and I use an amp, just a Buskers amp. It's what sort is it? A Roland.
Yeah.
And because of and I'm playing with a band, a couple of blokes called the Awkward Squad, and I've got a guitar and percussion, sort of piano and percussion to get over, to get on the same sort of volume, and that has revolutioned my guitar playing.
Yeah.
It's given me another sort of, it hasn't revolutionised it, but it's just given me another bit of it.
Yeah.
Because I take great pride in being a rhythm guitar player.
Right.
Now,
You see,
I
I've
find
always,
that really interesting.
I've always thought of you. I mean, you've always got almost got like a ragtime kind of pick.
Yeah.
You know,
so,
which
yeah.
I've always loved, which I always thought was like something to aspire to. You know, because there's like one of my songs called "I'm as famous as my mailman," and as soon as I was playing it in block chords, and I just couldn't get away with it. And then I started thinking, well, how could I play this? And I started playing it, and I smiled because I thought, well, I bet that's the way that Dave Burland would play it. that kind of like ragtimey.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, there's people like Tommy Gilfillan. You know, I think is grossly underrated.
Oh yes.
As a guitar player,
Yeah.
because his rhythm is like so rock solid. Plus the fact that he's playing like such a strong bass line within jazzy chords and you know that kind of like rock and bass.
And we don't see enough of him.
No, I saw him the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's making a cautious sort of re-entry, I think,
Yes.
but not much of it.
Yeah.
He's probably got other things on his mind.
Yeah.
Because he's knocking on, he's like me. Knocking on. Yeah.
Well, it's just like one of those things. It's something that I mean I think we both love. Is the top and bottom, but we both love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's nothing that's I don't know. It's just all human life is within folk
part
music.
of it is,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, within traditional music, I would say entirely that there isn't an emotion that is left unturned
No.
or unsalted. There's no wound unsalted in folk music.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know.
It's. I think there's two things here. Is that once you get into it, I think you get into it. It might be worth telling us why you got into it in the first place, into folk music, into traditional music.
It's just what everybody was doing, and when you were in a shepherd's hut, you could start singing like an unaccompanied song, and the story. I was quite strange because I used to listen to pop song words, and I knew exactly what the song was about, and people would go, no idea.
No idea.
You know, like Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town, is quite shocking.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like being played on rotation almost.
Yeah.
You know, and Jolene.
Yeah.
You know, all these songs were being played. I know I've chosen like two country versions.
But they're story songs, aren't they?
But the story songs.
Narrative songs.
Yeah, which is what they were basically four
And
verses.
that's it. And I got into it because I thought this is really strange music, you know.
Exactly the same as me. I just thought, I have never heard anything like this.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's great. And that's I always said to some people, you know, once you're into it, you never quite escape it.
Yeah.
You might get near getting out of it in a way,
Yeah.
but you can't escape it because it comes back to you. You'll hear something on the radio and you think,
Yeah.
oh, that's just like, what, you know.
But I mean, I get the impression, especially when you had things like Shagpile and things like that you had like a rock, you know, a rock and roll.
Oh,
like,
that's what I listened to when I was
yeah,
growing
when you
up.
were younger,
Yeah.
and you've come to folk, whereas sometimes you play folk music when they come to try and play rock. I mean, me especially, when I play what I think is a rock song of mine, people go, that sounded really folky. And I'm going like, did it? Rats, you know.
So I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so waiting for like laser beams to be sort of jumping off my, you know, my skin tight Lamy jumpsuit, you know, as I flail the banjo high in the air.
I think
that sounds really folky to me.
Yeah, I did sort of. I think you look at what you do, and I'm sure you've got plenty of them where they become a sort of pivotal moment in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I decided to stop playing in tunings
Yeah.
at one point because I thought, I'm playing a guitar here and it's good enough for all these great guitar players, these great jazz players, great folk players to play in standard tuning, you know. And I thought, what am I doing here with all this? You know?
I mean,
I'm nothing against them now.
Oh, no, I know. Well, I only play in dadguide. When I'm playing electric guitar, I play in dadguide. When I play the bass, I've detuned the bass with dadguide. You know, it's not a case of like, you know, old dogs and new tricks, but it's just, for me, it's very expressive. And I couldn't get my head round chords for for folk music. I would play, my natural key is D.
Yeah.
So when you've got like that bottom E string, you're going to have to at least either miss it out or
Well,
play.
you've got to drop it down.
Or play it on the second fret.
Yeah.
and it was Gordon Tyrrell who showed me Dadgad,
Yeah.
and I never looked back. I never looked back.
Yeah,
People
it-
would
it-
be looking.
well, I used
people
to
would be
play
looking at your hand when you're playing in standard tuning.
Yeah.
But in Dadgad, nobody had a clue, and they were listening to the song rather than trying
That's
to work
true. I
out,
never
rather
thought
than
about
try
it
and
like
work out what you were doing with your hand.
Yeah. And it gives you a fuller sound as well.
Yes, yeah.
Because
I
there's,
mean,
there's all octaves, aren't there?
yeah, and I almost play the bass on
Yeah.
the in Dadgad,
Yeah.
and then pick the melody on the top strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I play chords which I call Clint Eastwoods, because I like a chord with no name, you know. So, so all these old songs that I had, quite a lot of them were like jazzy, and like trying to work out the jazz chord in Dadgad.
Yeah.
It's just like, but it's such a great journey, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's just been absolutely fabulous talking to you.
It has, yeah. It's
and-
good to talk to you. It's
yeah,
interesting, yeah.
yeah.
Have we missed anything out? That you
No,
think?
no, not at all. It was just meant to be like just a chat,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
and that's great. I mean, can I ask you about the Awkward Squad? Because I love what you're
I'll
doing.
give you a thingy.
Oh, it's,
No, I will. I'll give you one.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was, it's almost parallel as what you were saying in some ways. Is when when my career started to drift off now, because I've never been one for sort of I can't do that ringing up thing. You know.
yeah,
I don't object to anybody
No,
else
no,
doing
no.
it, and that's fine. But so I got these two pals of mine who were in the Awkward Squad, and I said I'm not playing enough, and I'm not, and as a result it's a physical thing now, and I'm not playing enough, so I need to play more. So when you come round to our house on a Thursday night, we'll just bang through whatever we fancy, you know.
yeah,
And it's developed out of that. And so we've got a fairly, you could say it's either eclectic or apocalyptic sort of choice of songs.
well, either they're hard to say when you're drunk.
Yes, it is actually, yeah. And sometimes like, we get up and I mean we did one at a little theatre in Barnsley on Friday. And if you ever get the chance to play that, it's called the Lamp Room Theatre.
Yeah,
It's a fabulous venue. It seats 187, which is
Yeah.
fine. I filmed it a couple of times, but it's so good because there's a huge stage, and you are right there, just over there. The sort of rake seats are just, and it's great to talk to people. I love to.
Yeah.
I know you do. You know,
Yeah.
that's another thing. That's maybe we didn't touch on that, but it's the communication, isn't it?
yeah. I think like 20 years of talking for 6 hours a day. I think I've really honed my performance skills.
Yeah.
You know, and this last 18 months or so, going to like buskers nights,
Yeah.
I've learned how to play with the most appalling PA systems and to the finest people you could ever possibly meet.
Yeah.
You know, because I can't. I mean, I can just get up and just do the songs.
Yeah.
But I always feel compelled. I mean, if nobody's listening, I'll wind up saying, you know, this is a song about swinging through the trees with orangutans and sexing bananas. And you'll see, like, maybe one person, like, look up from their phone and go, and then go back down again. But I just feel compelled to say something.
Yeah.
You know. But yes, so like communicating with people.
Yeah, and that is it, isn't it? It's the whole package you get. I feel that's very important because there are people they can do it in any way you want. I mean, Martin Carthy went through a thing of not talking a great deal at one time and just used to sing the songs, you know. But he's such a charismatic sort of bloke anyway. You know.
Yeah.
But I know this has nothing to do with it, but I just was reminded of this story of a pal of mine at the gym the other morning. And it's a song. It's a story from the northeast. It's from Wallsend, and it concerns. I think it was Tommy Duffy who was the second Lindisfarne bass player.
All right. Yes. Yeah.
And he's from Byker.
Yeah.
And he's very broad, you know, very comical, I know. And his dad evidently kept pigs, and he had a pigsty up in Wallsend. He was a farmer, and he went to see his dad, and. He said he went into the club first, and he said, "You see my dad?" He said, "Oh, he's up with the pigs." So he made his way up to there, and there's this big field with the pigs in, and they said they're all bloody rooting about, and the mud. It's been raining. There's loads of mud and all that. And he said his old dad's leaning over the fence, looking at these pigs, He said, "Hey, Dad, are you all right?" Yeah. All right. He says, and he says he was quiet for a minute or two, and then he looked at him. He said, "Have you looked at them?" He said, "There's no wonder they call them pigs, is there?" I just think that's one of the best bits of philosophy I've ever heard. You know?
Just look at them.
And you can't admit it, can you?
And from then on, I have never ever wanted to be like a star.
No.
Or draw attention to myself with the way I look, or so like the way that I act. You know, you just kind of go.
It's a thing that always. I mean, there were moments like yourself when I had stack heel boots and all that sort of thing, and then you look at yourself in photographs at a later date and you think.
We wore what we wore because it was what everybody else wore.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
So,
Good old.
yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It's been a great
Absolute
pleasure.